Stefs Rock Show. Our next guest is a drag artist, cult leader, and filmmaker, Peaches Christ.
Hello, thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Thanks for coming by. So I'm super excited that the Jawbreaker director, Darren, connected me with you. How do you know Darren? How did you guys meet?
Oh my God, so long ago that it was through a thing before Facebook or MySpace called Friendster.
I know
And
that.
do you
I know
remember
that.
that? Okay, so we
Yeah.
met that way. I had seen Jawbreaker. I also was a young person who was obsessed with all the things Darren was. I just happened to grow up in Maryland, and Darren was kind of like living this dream life as a kid growing up in the Valley. So when I heard him on NPR, he was on Ira Glass's show, This American Life, and I was just fascinated by him talking about his childhood. He had made a movie called Put the Camera on Me, a documentary about his growing up. And I thought, this is the guy who directed Jawbreaker. Like, amazing. We're separated at birth. So I just, found him on Friendster, or he found me. I don't remember, but we connected that way. And then we met, and it was immediately like, one of those instant friendships where we've been besties ever since. And that was probably like, I don't know, 20 something years ago.
Wow, that's awesome. He's really cool. I'm
Yeah.
such a fan of Jawbreaker. I'm a little groupie of Jawbreaker.
Yeah.
So are
And
you in the
Darren
Bay
produced
Area?
my first feature film. We've actually gone on to work together a lot and collaborate together on projects. So
Oh,
yeah,
that's
we
really
we
cool.
yeah. So Darren produced All About Evil, my directorial debut, which was so great. And I mean, I'll be forever grateful that he, took that chance and believed in me, because I was an underground punk rock drag artist, from San Francisco, who was creating insane stuff. And Darren was like, look, you're really, talented. If you ever do a feature film, I'll produce it. And he
Wow.
did, he kept his word. So yes, I'm in San Francisco.
So, okay, I love the Bay Area. I'm from Sacramento, so we're not too, far apart. Tell me, is the San Francisco drag scene? It's been a long time since I used to be heavily out there more 20 years ago when I could drive all night, from the club. Now,
Uh-huh.
now it's like I gotta get a hotel.
Right,
Is it
right.
poppin'? Are you guys getting along well? Is it like RuPaul's Drag Race? Is it catty? What's it like out there?
That's a good question. I would say that it's not like RuPaul's Drag Race. And in that way, I mean, it is it's still uniquely what it's been. And how should I best put this in a succinct way? The Coquettes were a commune living hippie drag troupe that began in 1969. And I think this sort of tenets of drag that they really brought to, what was essentially, a scene that was female illusion everywhere. It was female illusion played for straight people's entertainment, which is great and fine. But that's what Finocchio's was in North Beach. That's what the drag scene was really internationally. And here's this group of hippies and punks, pre-punks, who come along and say, we're going to do drag and wear glitter in our beards. We're going to include cis women. We're going to be outrageous. We're going to be wild. We're going to look like clowns. We're going to look like creatures. And we're going to do shows at midnight at the Palace Theater in North Beach, before screenings of midnight movies. And we're going to include people like Divine and Mink Stole from Maryland and make this wild, outrageous scene. And I think that birth is really something that all of us in San Francisco are still living in the legacy of. And even though drag has been popularized by things like RuPaul's Drag Race, it hasn't really infiltrated San Francisco. San Francisco is still very much a come as you are, no rules. The more batshit insane and wild and self-reflective your drag is, the more expressive it is, the better. Whereas I feel like Drag Race, as much as I love it, it's entertaining. It's really been great for us in a lot of ways. It's much more of this is how you do drag. This is what you should be good at. This is how you should do your makeup.
Mm.
San Francisco is kind of the opposite of that. Like, if someone tells you this is how you should do it the other way. That's kind of the mindset of San Francisco. And
Yeah,
we
I
are
do
very
love.
much a community that gets along. Sorry to interrupt. I remember you
Oh
asked me
no.
if we were catty or, that's the other thing. All that stuff. And as much as I love Dragula, I'm going to be on Dragula next episode or in a couple episodes. I'm a judge, and I've been a judge many, many times. I think there's this sense for reality television, especially American reality television, that you've got to have drama, you got to have fighting, you got to have people at each other's throats. And I get that, but that is honestly, especially in the horror, punk, darker drag world, it's actually the opposite. We tend to be very sensitive, I'll say, sensitive, artistic, empathic people who lift each other up and are looking more for community than we are a fight, if that makes sense.
Well, of course, and you've got to make good TV ratings.
Yes.
I did a lot of silly reality shows 20 years ago, and the producers feed you lines. It's somewhat
Right.
scripted and whatnot.
Yeah.
But I do love how Portland and San Francisco are very open minded. Sacramento's not there yet. I joined a burlesque group, and we had some drag
Mm.
kings and drag queens on the troupe, and people that came to the show that normally knew us as an all female group were not ready for a mixture of different, genders
Oh.
and what was going on. So it's fascinating. We're only like an hour and a half away, but the Central Valley
Yeah.
of California has not caught up to the punk rock atmosphere. I am a random question. Do you date, or is it kind of all over the place, somebody else that does drag, or do you prefer someone that doesn't perform in drag, or does it matter?
I mean, this is a loaded question because I've come to grips with a lot of my own. I didn't realize that I was playing into a sort of misogynistic, trope in my own early young drag career, where I was sort of separating my drag life from my sex life, meaning that I would de-drag my apartment so that like a trick wouldn't know that they were sleeping with Peaches Christ, and luckily
Interesting.
I was successful enough in drag early on at a very young age in San Francisco, because I was part of this performance troupe at Tranny Shack, where I was able to be part of this radically wild group of performers who became pretty well known in the city. And I didn't want people to know who I was out of drag. And so there
Mm.
was very much this, and I wasn't alone. I think a lot of us were like that, where we were unfortunately buying into gay men's internalized homophobia about, if you dress like a woman or you're like a woman, you're less desirable. I realize that now, looking
Strange.
back
That's
on it.
wild to me.
Yeah, I mean, gay community has a lot of issues, right? And so like masculinity is put up on this pedestal, and we still shame each other for being feminine, especially in sexual, if you look on Grindr, it's always about like, I'm masculine, no femmes, no fats, whatever. So we have all these issues, obviously, that are reflective of society's issues, right? And like when I really like started to read more about it, it was like, oh, it's all sexism. This is like rooted in the way that society, devalues women and, queer men, especially, if we're not aligned in the fight for, feminism, it's sort of at our own detriment. Anyway, that is like a much more convoluted answer to your question, but it's
Yeah.
something that I thought a lot about. And luckily, when I met my now husband, I'd kind of gotten over all that stuff, but not enough that like, well, first of all, he's an immigrant, and when I met him, he was here to learn English. And I remember, not telling him that I was a drag performer for the first like 5 or 6 weeks that we dated. I would say things like, I'm a filmmaker, which is true. I'm a writer, director, producer, which is true. I'm an actor. I'm a performer.
Yeah.
But I didn't say what kind of performer. And then I had such a crush on him, and he's from Turkey, and he's masculine. And I thought, oh, he's not gonna like it when I come out to him as a drag queen. But then when I came out to him and said, oh, by the way, I do drag, he was like, oh, okay. We were walking down Market Street, I'll never forget. And it was kind of like, oh shit, he doesn't know what that means. So I'm like, okay, I'm a drag queen. He's like, oh, okay. That's cool. And I'm like, do you know what that is? And he said, oh, you dress up in, crazy costumes and women's clothes and you entertain people. He's like, yeah, I'd like to see you do that. That sounds cool. It was just like no
No
reaction
big
and
deal though. It
no
didn't
big
scare him.
deal. And I think because he was from another country and he was new to San Francisco, he didn't have any conception of what Peaches Christ was either. So it was sort of this lovely, thing where we kind of just, it ended up being a non-issue. And I remember when he saw Peaches for the first time, everyone was kind of like, "Oh, how's he going to react? How's he going to react?" And he came up to me after the show and was like, "Hey, that was a great show. I loved it. Do you need a water or anything? Can I get you something?" That
Oh,
was, and that's kind of been it. I mean, he really enjoys what I do, but he's not like obsessed with it. And he's also not freaked out by it, if that makes sense.
yeah. And I just was kind of getting it too. I think it's hard. I'm a performer, and sometimes it's hard for a performer to date a fellow performer. I want someone,
Yes.
just to put it bluntly, a little bit more boring, a little bit more neutral, and maybe beige. I think the
Yes.
balance is better than two main characters trying to squeeze on the stage. But
A
I've
hundred.
raised eyebrows in radio from a long time because I started going to Rocky Horror in '98 in Santa Cruz,
Mhm.
and I just fell in love with men dressed as women, especially Dr. Frankenfurter and drag and
Yes.
tights. And I've always loved men gender blending and kind of a feminine aspect to men. But when it comes to dating, then it's a whole complicated ball of wax. And so I
Right.
don't know. And you know what's what I will say, people have been shocked about this, and I just like to put it out there. There is men that identify as gay that are DL with women as well. Like it's a two-way street because I've been on
Uh-huh.
Hinge
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
Grinder at the same time, and there's men that like are scared to lose their gay card and say that
Mm-hmm.
they are hooking up with a woman, and it's so
Mm-hmm.
fascinating to me why. But everyone's judging everybody too much on every side, and why can't we just
Yes.
say like, "Hey, dude, you connected, cool, right on, good for you." Like I don't know why it's such a big
I will say
deal.
that it's been lovely to see younger people not give a shit as much.
Hmm.
And obviously, I'm Gen X, and confronting my own, upbringing. Like I was lucky. I didn't, grow up with parents who were hateful or anything like that. But I grew up very, very religious, as far as being
Same.
Catholic. I went to Catholic school. I wouldn't say that my parents, they were just Catholics. They were like normal. Well, one was Catholic, one was Southern Baptist, but they weren't scary, right? And so the reality of it is I still was influenced by society and the school I went to. And obviously Peaches Christ and Midnight Mass are kind of a middle finger to all of that. And so you start to detangle all this stuff and you're like, oh my God, we're so fucked up. Like, most people are probably bisexual to some degree, but we have to live in a
Yes.
society where that is the least acceptable thing.
Yeah.
It's the most uncomfortable thing, which is so weird because it's like, well, that's probably what most of us are, on some continuum. Yeah, I don't
I've
know. I
always said
mean,
sexuality is a spectrum and everyone's on a
yes.
spectrum, and you might be 99% straight, these guys with the flannel go, and that's okay, but
Hmm.
there's still that 1%. Like don't tell me.
Hmm.
Okay, so one of my favorite movies that I saw when I was younger, I want to know what you think of it, is Hedwig and the Angry Inch. Have you seen
Hmm.
it, and
Oh, of
what's your thoughts on
course.
it?
I was literally texting with John Cameron Mitchell yesterday about a possible, collaboration. He is a dear friend of mine, and
Oh wow.
I, saw that show before it was a movie. Speaking of my parents, I took my parents to see that show in New York City at the Jane Street Theater when it was still like an underground.
Oh my god.
Um, celebrities had started to go to it, but it was more of an insider thing. And I thought, oh, my parents will probably like this. We had heard about it in San Francisco because actually, they there was this sort of promotion we did together where I dressed up as Hedwig, but it was hilarious because
Oh.
no one in the audience in San Francisco knew what Hedwig looked like. So there were a bunch of us dressed up as Hedwig promoting a CD of the show that had just come out, and yeah, and I brought my parents to see it, and my conservative Republican father sat in the front row, and John Cameron Mitchell smashed those tomatoes at the end of the show. And I remember the tomato juice spraying all over my father. Oh, the first thing that happened was John Cameron Mitchell came in as Hedwig and kissed my father on the head, you know, and then got up on stage and did the whole show. And my parents bought that CD and they loved
Oh.
that music. And so that show and John Cameron Mitchell have like this really special place in my heart because it was this great way for me in early part of my drag career to have someone else show my parents, like, look what drag can be,
Yeah.
look, you love rock and roll. My parents love rock and roll and good music, and they fell in love with that show and they fell in love with the music. And yeah, it's such a special thing. And then the movie, I ran the movie exclusively at the Bridge Theater in San Francisco when it came out, and worked with John on some of the movie stuff. And God, that movie's great. It's just such a beautiful, unusual musical. In fact, I think it's kind of maybe one of those things that's special, like Rocky Horror is, where you can't
Hmm.
duplicate it. You'll never be able to remake what it was. It's very much of a time and a place, and it's going to stand the test of time. If you show it to young people today, they're still just as moved by it.
It's definitely a cult classic. I agree. And that's great. Your parents were conservative but open minded to go see Hedwig and okay with it. My parents, same Catholic, Republican. Um, I was very sheltered as well growing up. And when I was like, I'm dating a girl, they just never wanted to talk about it. We didn't want to bring it up. It could not be a topic of discussion. And so
Right.
a lot of people aren't as open-minded to it,
Yeah.
which is hard. I'm now a mom, and I don't care who my kids want to love and what they want to
Right.
do. Cool, righteous dude, you're my
Yep.
kid. I
Yeah, I
don't.
was lucky. I had a mom that was like you and a dad who was conservative. So
Okay.
and also, I mean, remember, I grew up in an era where you could have that kind of parental dynamic.
Oh yeah,
Can
it
you
wouldn't work
imagine?
today. It wouldn't work
No, I
today.
mean, you could never. I mean, because the divide is so different, right? It's so
Yeah.
vastly different. Growing up, conservative wasn't equated with being in the KKK, which is basically what it is today. If you identify as a conservative, you're basically unapologetically saying, I'm a racist, I'm a homophobe, whatever. So it's an interesting thing. I could grow up in
I'm
a
so
family
bummed
where,
by it though. I'm gonna be.
yeah.
I'm so bummed. I don't date by political affiliation. And I think
Hmm.
that's a hot topic, especially in California, because most people do.
Hmm.
And I am so upset since 2020 how separated everybody's been. I'm a little bit middle of the ground. I'm not gonna lie. I'm a
Hmm.
little bit, I'm an independent in the middle. And how people hate each other or put them in a category or say like if you're financially conservative then you might be racist or so. I'm like, wait, I'm thinking about my career sometimes and real estate when I'm thinking about taxes and whatnot. And I love everyone and I'm open to everyone, but I do feel like lots of people want to put you in boxes, no matter what
Hmm.
it is. And I don't know. I've friends in all categories, and I wish they'd hang out, and some of them will not hang out with each other because of political
Right.
affiliation. And I'm bummed. I wish
Yeah,
it was
I
back
think,
to
I mean,
where
we
the early
need,
2000s was,
yeah.
it was so like you could be a log cabin Republican and nobody thought you were racist. Do you know what I mean?
I don't know about that.
That's okay.
I'm
That's
pretty sure I
okay.
thought they were racist. Yeah, I mean, gay men who separate,
Uh,
when you walk into a room full of log cabin Republicans, you're walking into a room of white gay men who have money.
okay.
That's who they are.
Okay.
That's
I'm
who
an
they
outfit.
are.
That's
And
right.
they are. But anyway, I agree with what you're saying and think that what's unfortunate here really is like so many things that just aren't working anymore.
Yeah.
Late stage capitalism not working, two-party system not working,
Yeah.
electoral college not working, right? So like our country's hit a wall and we're a mess,
Yeah.
and some major things have to be, on both sides. The Republicans are a mess and the Democrats are a mess. And so there's gonna have to be a shakeup in order for us to move forward, or we're going to fail and the rest of the world is going to leap ahead of us.
I agree. I'm just saying it's extreme on both sides, and I've seen the hate on
Yeah.
both sides. And I'm just such like a lover child that wants like just
Yeah.
come together, like just everybody get laid more, maybe smoke some pot and stop
Yeah.
hating each other. It's just weird. Um, okay. And I also wanted to know what is your favorite song that you like to perform to or that you've ever performed to?
That's a good question, because the other night I just did an evening of gay grunge, a concert
Love.
called Smells Like Queen Spirit, where I work with a band. It's so weird. I do these big shows with a conductor named Edwin Outwater, and he and I formed a company called Peach Out Productions, where we tour symphony halls and have even done our
Oh,
shows at the Royal Albert Hall. You know, like where I've been in, like Peaches Christ has the main dressing room at Royal Albert Hall the day after Adele
wow.
had it. You know,
That's
so it's
cool.
like this surreal thing. But Edwin and I, as we've done these symphony shows for about the last 8 years, we started thinking like, well, what else could we do? So we actually have a secret project we're not allowed to talk about yet. But one of the other things that we wanted to do was to do rock and roll with drag fronted vocalists. So
I love
that's what
that.
we've been
That's my
doing. Yeah.
vibe.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
we've been doing that, and I sang "Smells Like Teen Spirit" the other night. You can look, it's on my Instagram and stuff, and I had a blast. I had so much fun. But as far as a favorite song, God, that is a really good question. I have a new song that was created with my child, Thomas Decker, a really wonderful, talented actor who's also a musician, and he wrote the song for me, and we sing it together, and it's called "Child of Christ," and it's a dance bop in the spirit of My Life with the Thrill Kill Cult and KMFDM and all the industrial music that I love. So that's my favorite song to sing right now.
I love Garbage and Hole, and all the
Yeah.
grunge. And I didn't realize now from talking to you that Peaches Christ, obviously a play on Jesus Christ, you also had a
Mhm.
religious upbringing. So there's more to
Yes.
it than just the play on words. Do you still practice religion at all or no?
No, I don't. I mean, I identify as a Satanist, but as far as it being religious, no, it's politically. I'm not part of the Church of Satan. I'm part of the Satanic Temple. And for those in the know, that just basically means we're performatively political, meaning like we really believe in the separation of church and state. And so the Satanic Temple often will, go into public places like courthouses and schools and things where, the Ten Commandments or Christianity is being rammed down people's throats, and they'll challenge it. So that's the only quote unquote religion I'm part of. However, my drag daughter, Jinx Monsoon, and I have started to talk about maybe forming our own religion, much in the same way. So all that to say that I think religion in many ways needs to be reevaluated. I think we need to look at why they aren't these taxes don't apply to pastors of mega churches who own yachts and multiple mansions. Like, it's so clearly corrupt and disgusting. um However, I love fellowship, I love gathering, I love
Hmm.
being with people who share values and ideals. And I think maybe there is this place where the spirit of religion and spirituality, I believe in spirituality, I believe in witchiness. It's not like I'm a total atheist. I believe in something larger than ourselves. I just don't want to be part of anything where there's a person in control of money telling me what to do. And
Yeah.
that's where I think religion really kind of falls apart, much like corporations and government. At the end of the day, government, corporations, and religion are driven by greed. And, unfortunately, that greed corrupts. And so if you look at Christians and then you look at Jesus Christ, I think, live more in line with what Jesus Christ would be than a lot of Christians, right? I'm not judgmental. I accept people who are foreigners and immigrants. I hang with the prostitutes. I am much more of a Christ-like person, but any Christian's going to tell you that I'm not. And then they're going to turn around and, uh, you know, molest children and hide behind their, you know, uh, priesthood. That's the fucked up thing about religion.
I like your term of fellowship, and I do think there could be community groups and people that get along in the same thing. But obviously, I agree. Like, I'm religious, but I practice it by myself in my house. I don't need to
Hmm.
go and worship with somebody and yeah, give money or be with a larger group of people that could maybe be more judgmental than I am. So
Yeah.
the mega churches definitely have a sour taste. And then obviously the Boy Scouts and the Catholic school leaders have all been tainted with a lot of people that probably had internal conflict within themselves and they were too uncomfortable to be themselves. So then they
Hmm.
acted out with weak people that couldn't defend themselves. So it's such a scary, harsh disgusting thing that's happened in the world,
Yeah.
but it is crazy that both sides, and then you've got the right saying, "Oh my gosh, watch out for all the drag kings
For
in the
me.
in the library,"
Watch out for me. Watch out for
which
they really
is a
love to
hot
call us
topic.
all of the
It's
I mean, they really love to call us groomers and pedophiles. And this is the thing. And it's just sort of like, where? I can show you this week. I'm sure I could find religious leaders who have been busted for molesting children and child porn. I would love to see the list of drag queens that have
yeah,
been. It doesn't exist. So this
yeah.
projection of Peaches Christ is the enemy. I would like to say to you, when someone's screaming that about drag performers, go check their hard drive. You
Yeah,
know,
that's a good point. And I also want to say, like, as a parent, you can choose where you take your kids. Now, am I going to take my kids to one of my burlesque shows at night? No, I don't want my kids
right?
seeing
Of
me in that
course.
light. I'm going to be honest, but it's
And
so,
a lot of us have no interest
it's,
in performing for children. I have
yeah,
no interest in
me
that.
too.
Never, ever. I've always thought of Peaches Christ as something for adults. Now, my friends who want to go read to kids in libraries and are kid friendly and kid appropriate, absolutely. So it's exactly what you're saying. We know the difference. And when they're screaming it from the rooftop, these people are grooming our children. Just know that they have a mirror in front of them. They are freaking out because they have secrets.
Projecting something within them that,
Yes,
yeah, they're
of
uncomfortable
course.
with. So what's a project? I know you said you can't talk about one. Is there a project coming up or that you want to start and work on that you can
Mm.
say for 2026 or that you want to accomplish?
Yeah, I mean, something that was announced this past year is that my podcast co-host Michael Verratti, we do a podcast called Midnight Mass, which is all about cult movies. He and I have met with producers and now have the ball rolling on a movie project that I really hope gets made. We've written a script. I'm set to direct it. And it's basically a movie about, well, we optioned a book, a biography on the drag queen Doris Fish, who was a real trailblazer here in San Francisco in the 80s. And she made this cult movie called Vegas in Space with her best friends, Miss X and Tippy. And when you get to the sort of behind the scenes story of how they made this movie and what their lives were like and what they were doing and how just pioneering they were as far as punk and new wave and drag and cult movies and the fact that very few people know them, we want to make this movie that's kind of like if you've seen Tim Burton's Ed Wood, and it's
Yeah.
about how wonderful Ed Wood and his misfit group of people were who made Plan 9 from Outer Space. That's essentially what we're, trying to do, but with a totally new, story about these amazing people who were doing this thing. So that's the big project I'm going all in on right now. But I'm constantly juggling, that I have ADHD, and so it's like I have a big haunted attraction I just wrapped on, and I'll be writing a new story for Terror Revolt for next year, and I've got other symphony shows coming up. So it's always helpful for me to kind of juggle 10 different projects at once.
I love that your brain's everywhere. Do you have notes? You're
It
just
really
taking note. You're
is.
doing creative outlet stuff everywhere.
I have to have a lot of lists and force myself to kind of be organized. But it's hard for me to focus on any one project for a length of time. So I tend to be constantly working on at least 3 or 4 things at a time.
That's how I am in relationships. I get it.
Totally.
So okay, if you want to get out, you want to take a break from the creative stuff and leave San Francisco, what's your favorite go-to vacation spot?
That is a really good question. So I mentioned my husband's Turkish, and so I love going to Turkey. I
I heard
would
they have the
love
best
to.
teeth. Everyone's getting their teeth in Turkey.
Everything. They have their teeth. If you need new hair plugs,
Yeah.
if you need, they're definitely a what do they call that? A cosmetic travel destination.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they medical travel. Anyway, they're amazing. But for me, I'm a foodie who loves food, and the food in Turkey is just so amazing. So I love to go to Istanbul, and now that I'm really familiar with the culture and the people and the places, it's nice because I can kind of hide away there and nobody knows me. And, I could kind of like just get lost in this giant city where unfortunately I don't speak the language. So I love that. And I also love the beach. I grew up, spending summers in Ocean City, Maryland, very much an East Coast beach baby. And even though I was always goth and weird and horror, I have a little bit of a beach bum, side in me where there's nothing better than getting an umbrella, sitting on a beach, listening to the ocean and reading a book. Like that is, so Puerto Vallarta is one of my favorite places.
Yeah,
What
the
about you?
ocean's
Where do you like
calling
to go? I'm curious.
everywhere. That's a
Yeah,
good
I'm like that
question.
too.
I was in Hollywood for a long time, so I liked Malibu and Pacific Palisades,
Yeah,
hanging out on the
gorgeous.
beach. I like Paris is my favorite place if I'm going on like a
Amazing.
big vacation, and then Cancun. I think I'm a little bit of a party animal. I've slowed down now,
Ha!
but I love a good week in Cancun to black out.
Mhm.
I
Oh,
was with the founder of
wow.
Girls Gone Wild for a while, so he has a whole big place in Cabo and Cancun, and so we'd go down with Joe and
Oh
just
my
black out
God.
for like a week or two.
Amazing.
Yeah, now I'm in bed at like 8 p.m. though. Like,
That's me too. I mean, I don't even I blacked out so much that I gave up drinking way back in 2002. So I
good.
have, yeah, I was a mess. I mean, we were crazy, like we were wild. My
Same, because
early
I
drag
swear there
years were
was
wild.
there was no photos too. Like nobody knew.
Right.
Like
Yeah,
I would get
exactly.
so trashed all the time, and
Yeah.
I've slowed down a lot. And but like I swear we were all the wildest Gen X
Yeah.
because there was no proof. Nobody
Yeah,
knew. We weren't
exactly.
worried. Oh, someone's gonna see you passed out, wasted at a club. No, like you're gonna
And there
hear
wasn't
about
a
it.
lot of, well, at least in my community and probably in yours as well. Like I was a drag queen, drag queens in the 90s. It was kind of like, drag queen without, I remember a queen said this to me once. I'll never forget it. I was like, I'm thinking about giving up drinking. I'm just such a mess. And she was like, honey, your drag career will be over. A drag queen with no alcohol is like a car with no gas. And
Yeah,
I
I
was like,
love that. I love
but
that.
it's not true, of course, but it just goes to show that like there was no judgment. The bumper stickers and t-shirts from our nightclub were, they said I blacked out at Tranny Shack, because it was so part of the experience of going to that club was to watch this outrageous drag show at midnight on a Tuesday and then get tanked and then go home and wake up and go to work still drunk.
Yeah.
That's how Gen Xers did it. Like we didn't call off. We didn't, claim to have, something wrong with us. We just sort of was like, yeah, wake up and go to work drunk.
Oh yeah, we showed up. There was
Yeah,
I
exactly.
I didn't not show up. And I will agree when I did burlesque for so many years, if I had a couple drinks, I did better. Now there's that,
Yeah,
slippery slope. You have 3 or 4, you
right.
might not land your turns. But if I had a
Right,
couple, I had
right.
more confidence. I didn't get nervous, on stage. But I also think there's a strange correlation. I don't know why, by those of us that are more fluid sexually, possibly drink or experiment with drugs. There's more openness
Mm,
to a little bit of everything, or trauma can be more prevalent in the
mhm.
community. And so the dealing with kind of over drinking to mass trauma and whatnot from childhood.
Oh,
And
for
so
sure.
a lot of people get therapy and slow down or healing treatments, and kind of figure out if you need to go sober or what the route is that you have to go. But there is, or performing in general too, rock stars that I've interviewed, there seems to be a major substance abuse issue with
Mm,
performers. I don't
yes,
know.
big
It's like
time.
we feel
It's
everything so
real.
much.
I think that's right. I think those of us, I mean, I think artists in general tend to struggle with these things more. People who are drawn to creative things. I don't, I'm sure that someone's done studies on it. But what's been lovely in my community, at least, is I always had people around me who had done the work, to pull themselves out of, I mean, I really needed to see role models of people who were sober or, dealing with their mental health. And I was lucky that I had those sort of people in my life that I could look at and go like, oh, okay, I can do this creative stuff and I can still be funny and I can make movies and, get shit done even without alcohol, which is hilarious to think about because at the time I thought, oh, if I stop drinking, all the magic is going to go. So yeah, and I also come from a humongous family of alcoholics. So there's
Same.
the other part that's just like I think it was genetically just in my DNA to be an alcoholic.
Yeah, hereditary. And I think, yeah, when you have genetically
Yeah,
like anxiety and alcoholism, that's not a good
yeah,
combination to kind of keep
yeah.
going for it. Yeah, no, I agree. And it's you got to watch yourself. But I thought I wasn't going to be funny slowing down. Like I don't
Hmm.
do any drugs or hard liquor. But I think it is cool. I will say when you're in your teens, maybe in 20s, to go on a trip and open your mind and see things you wouldn't normally see sober. But then I've lost friends, right? You got to reel it back in and not go too
Yeah.
wild and then go, oh, I can be this artsy, cool, outgoing person sober. I don't need to experiment with things. Or a lot of people are California sober now. They're just
Yes.
having weed. That's like a very popular thing. Are
Yeah.
you California sober or no?
I guess in a way you would say that I am because I just don't drink and I don't really do any hard drugs.
You're like, I only
Um
do heroin. I don't drink though.
well, the truth is that I had a therapist when I was sort of losing my mind, completely sober, and got a doctor and figured out. I mean, there were a number of things going on with me. I was anemic. I had both kinds of anemia. I had sleep apnea. I was all estrogen. My hormones and everything was completely out of whack,
Wow.
and I was having a sort of a spiritual, I don't know, like a
What age
cliche,
was
you
this?
know, I was 46, 45, 46,
That's
and I was
really
really,
common, mid
yeah, and
40s to kind of have a
I was
mental
really like,
shift.
I was having a mental shift. And so this therapist, over a period of months, talked me into doing mushrooms as a therapeutic, exercise. And
Microdosing, like I microdosed for a year.
it was actually no, it was like it's been a trip, every year annually. I've skipped a year. I mean, so the nice thing is I'm not addicted to it at all. It doesn't
Yeah.
trigger my addiction. It doesn't make me want to drink. In fact, it's I really do see it as medicine, and I also can. This is the thing about it. I can honestly say that my life dramatically improved, but I don't know what part of it is like the hormones, the mushrooms, the CPAP machine, the iron supplements. But I will say that dealing with that situation and going and having help with both doctors and therapists, I was able to kind of like reel in my insanity because I was just
Yeah.
really in a dark place. That being said, I personally think a lot of it's with the mushrooms.
Yeah. Like I said, I
Yeah.
liked microdosing and doing the teas and stuff. I thought that was kind of
Yeah.
neat for a little bit. Um, well, that's cool. Well, dude, thank you so much for seriously stopping by and
Of
telling me all
course.
about your art projects, talking movies, talking from politics to drag to everything. And I gotta go out to San Francisco and see you live sometime. But thank you
Yeah,
so
come
much for
see
coming
us.
by.
Thanks for having me.